When the devotee was thinking of the mystery of Maya, Chelapar gave the Mahavakya, see it as it really is, Athu Apadiye Ulathai Khan, and to explain that mystery he said, who knows, Yar Arivar. After teaching the path to knowledge, he taught the path of yoga. Master the Vasi, pranayama, control of breath, Vasi Yogam, there. Close the two channels, Irviliyai Adaku. The two channels are Ida and Pingala. Transcend the path to birth, Karuvaliyai Kada. Concentrate on the tip of the nose, Nasi Ninyai Noku. Be single-minded in your thoughts. To the land of Kashi go. Mount majestically on the fresh and lively horse, Pachai Puravilye Pangaga Eru, a reference to the control of breath. In the house that is not built by the carpenter, the body, tie the galloping horse, Tachankata Vitite Thavu Parakatu, again a reference to control of the breath. Chalapa Swami, who knew without any study all the technical terms used in yoga, taught the nuances and details of the yogic path. He explained to the good acolyte Yogar the different signs and awakenings that occur as one progresses in the practice of yoga. He further explained very clearly that once he had transcended the path of birth, the mind would be controlled, that if he concentrated on the tip of the nose and woke up, he would see the cosmic dance, and that at another stage he would hear sweet musical sounds. He also encouraged Yoga Swami not to abandon the path of devotion that he had practiced earlier by saying words like wear the rosary, Akumani Ani, repeat the 5 letters, Anjaluthai Otu, let the heart melt and melt, Neku Neku Urugu. Guru and disciple were out walking the roads one day. As always, Chalapa Swami walked boldly, his eyes gazing ahead, never watching the ground as most people do. It amazed Yoga Swami that in the 5 years they moved about together, his guru never stepped on even a single anthill, which were everywhere and which Yoga Swami had to diligently dodge during their treks. During this outing, Yoga Swami noticed his guru was glancing back at him every few minutes. Had he done something wrong? He didn't think so. Chalapa Swami quickened the pace as they approached a village and headed straight for the marketplace. He wandered among the stalls for an hour, pretending to stop and occasionally stealing a glance at Yoga Swami. His disciple was quietly waiting. They wandered around the village for a while longer, then took a cow trail through the fields. Chalapa Swami walked quickly till they reached the road, then ambled along, talking to himself and watching his shishya. They turned left at the crossroads and hadn't walked 6 meters when the sage spun around, peering suspiciously at Yoga Swami. "Why are you following me?" Was Chalapa Swami subtly challenging his shishya to examine the deeper purpose of their relationship? Chalapa Swami was especially particular about his food. Nearly everything he ate he prepared himself, making sure the ingredients were clean and fresh. If anyone looked at his food while he was preparing it, or even thought about him while he was cooking or eating, he would stop and discard the meal. His devotees often brought him yams, but he would never eat them. He dug holes in the yard and planted them instead. When the leaves began to appear, he would ask his sister to pick and cook them for him. Similarly, he was extremely sensitive to the vibrations people put into anything they offered him. Among his devotees was the chief priest of the Nalur Kailasanatha Shivan temple, an orthodox Brahmin man who strictly observed the rules of his caste. His home was adjacent to the temple. One day, when he looked up to see Chalapa Swami walking past his house, he called out and invited the sage to come in and share some milk rice he had just brought from the puja. He knew Chalapa Swami's habits and was afraid he might refuse. To his surprise, the guru came inside to partake. When the pangal was offered, Chalapa Swami made a sour face and said he wouldn't eat leftovers. "Someone has already eaten from it." The priest said, No one has even looked at it." He had brought it straight from the sanctum, he pleaded, where he had done the puja himself, but Swami insisted. The man called his wife, who had prepared the rice in the kitchen, and asked her if anyone had touched it. She was positive no one had, but just to be sure, she suggested they call their small son to see if he had somehow gotten into it before it went to the temple. When they asked him, he hung his head and confessed he had indeed picked a morsel from the dish before his father took it to offer during puja. Most people in Jaffna were sure Swami was completely mad, or at least too wild a sadhu to approach for blessings. Yogaswami had seen through his disguise that first day at Nallur. The moment of recognition, the look at Swami's eyes, full of the intent to take this young man to the heights of realization, lived within him and was all the assurance he ever needed. To Yogaswami, everything he ever wanted had already been accomplished in that moment. It was simply unfolding itself in the months that followed. His first year with Swami was the natural unfoldment of that first moment. He followed after the Guru wherever he would permit, listening, watching, waiting for the quieting word or glance that would tell him what was wanted. Whether he was awake or asleep, Yogaswami's thoughts turned round his Guru and the magic of his grace. Chapter 10. You haven't caught me yet. Swami rarely spoke directly to anyone. He never once told Yogaswami that he was his guru. He never talked to him like that, but he trained him, and Yogaswami adjusted everything about himself, his thoughts and feelings, his plans, his speech, the way he dressed, to blend his mind perfectly with his guru, and thereby catch his veiled instructions. Swami did the work without seeming to do anything. He trained Yogaswami to have one-pointed concentration at all times, and took every opportunity to shatter even his most subtle habits and attachments, demanding his disciple's whole mind, his undivided attention, every moment they were together, even if nothing was happening. With Swami there was no routine, no rest, no slacking. A day in his company was worth a year of regulated life. His constant babbling was not distracted chatter, but earnest, mindful statements, to him anyway. Though he might repeat himself without apparent end or purpose, his voice and expression revealed the full force of his mind behind every word. It fascinated Yogaswami. Try as he might, he could never reconcile Swami's resonant, measured tones and luminous glance with this seeming nonsense that poured from his lips. Yogaswami never tired of listening, for there would be a gem of purest jnana every so often amid the most whimsical prattle, priceless statements of supreme wisdom that only those close to Swami ever heard. Because he took in every word his guru spoke, sense and nonsense, Yogaswami caught these gems and used them purposefully to open his own inner mind. If these had been the only teachings Swami ever gave him, they would have been more than enough. In later years, Yogaswami passed these aphorisms on to his own devotees, calling them the Mahavakya, or great statements of his Satguru. In his poetic legacy, Nachintana, Yogaswami summarized the four most pertinent statements. All is truth. There is not one wrong thing. It was all finished long ago. We know not. Yogaswami explained that these sayings, when reflected upon, penetrate the mind in such a way that they bring about profound insight into the mind itself. Such realization of the mind as an inherently dual and self-created principle leads, ultimately through sadhana, to realization of that beyond the mind, Parashiva, the non-dual self, the Absolute. He told his closest devotees to use these sayings as keys to profound meditation. They are the deepest teachings that language can convey. At a distance, Swami appeared to be just another sadhu around the temple. Only a few ever glimpsed the spiritual power and soul maturity he possessed. These became his staunch devotees, putting up cheerfully with any amount of ranting and mad talk. They knew it was not for them, but was his way of chasing off the timorous and those who weren't ready for what he had to offer. Swami was unmoved by being misunderstood. Yogaswami explained this in a song called The Madman. Clothed in rags, he stands in front of Skanda's holy temple. On those who come and go before him, my little treasure, he will shower abusive language as it comes. It is as it is all a juggler's trick, he'll say. He wanders here and there, my little treasure. You will see him seated near the chariot. No caste has he, nor creed. He will not talk with anyone, my little treasure. People say he is deranged in mind. Justice and injustice have no place with him, nor does he conform to any pattern, my little treasure. He goes about like one insane. No holy ash or potu does his forehead bear. He will not utter what has once been said, my little treasure. He has passed beyond the gunas. He will not tell you to be calm and rid yourself of ego. He speaks in contradictions, my little treasure. Those hearing him will say he's lost his wits. Chalapan, my father, in vulgar language will revile all those who pass by in the streets, my little treasure. They will say that he is mad. With lordly gait he roams from place to place, but all of those who notice him, my little treasure, treat him with ridicule and scorn. One report has him repeating again and again, all the money in all the banks in the world is mine. Once he was introduced to a bodybuilder, a man proud of his physique. As the man flexed his muscles and bulged out his chest, Swami pointed at him and shouted, "That body is mine." The man who had spent years developing his physique was baffled and deflated by the Advaitic claim. Though his gruffness was what most who encountered him remembered, Swami was a free spirit. He walked about as though he owned the earth and everything upon it, happy, radiating compassion, and inveterately carefree, with a touch of regalness in his manner and his stance. He did not care to attract followers. He gave freely to all who were ready, accepting nothing in return. He worked in secrecy or not at all. His guise of madness, he confided, would spare him the curious, the magic mongers, and faint-hearted. Most of his devotees were householders. He initiated only 2 renunciate shishyas in his lifetime, Yogaswami and Katiraveluswami. There had been others, young men who recognized Swami as their guru and had been accepted by him, but not in the way Yogaswami and his brother Swami were. His method was stern, but they always felt his underlying and never-spoken care. They knew they lived under their guru's umbrella of grace. Swami held Yogaswami so still, so awake to every experience and lesson, that he was gradually carried deep within, living for months at a time in perfect harmony with his guru. His mind and heart filled with light. He lived in realms the gods hold dear. He rarely slept. If he wasn't with Swami, he was sitting alone somewhere, blissfully absorbed in the vast inner life his guru's grace had brought him. Yet the purifying scoldings never stopped. Swami harangued and swore at him for the least of faults, for no faults at all, taking everything away until nothing remained but the one existence Swami knew. As long as Yogaswami possessed the least consciousness of anything other than that, of anything to get or give, to gain or lose, Swami would fume and glare. Just the sight of Yogaswami would raise the guru's ire. He let him know whatever he had done, it was not enough. It was never enough. Yogaswami sang of the great sage and their relationship in My Master. He is the master who bestowed the basic mantra's secret. He dwells within the minds of those with loving hearts, laughing. He roams in Nallar's precincts. He has the semblance of a man possessed. All outward show he scorns. Dark is his body, his only garment rags. Now all my sins have gone, for he has burnt them up. All-powerful karma kindled in the past he has dispelled. His heart is ornamented with the love of God. He shines in purity as a light well-trimmed sheds luster. On that day at Nallar he came and made me his. He made me to be Summa after tests. Always repeating something softly to himself, the blessing of true life he will impart to anyone who ventures to come near him, and he has made a temple of my mind. All pomp of guise and habit he abhors. When devotees with great love come to worship, he'll hiss at them, and glower black as Yaman. Yet artfully he drew me neath his sway. 'Twas he who made me, but if I approach him, he will attack me without mercy. At me he'll look, and many words he'll utter. All aim and an object did that look dispel. He would not allow me to form any mental image. He would not allow me to offer any service. He would not allow me to know what was going to happen, and yet this God ingeniously fulfilled my heart's desire. To serve him was a pleasure, but he would not allow it. He would not let me know what his pleasure was. He would not permit the gaining of pleasurable cities. Yet thus did he befriend me. How wonderful was that! He would say, "There is no wonder," and those who came in awe and wonder he would not suffer to approach him. He left them in perplexity, but his own devotees he permitted to pay homage, that teacher of true wisdom. Enigmatic lessons. On many of their morning walks, Chellappa Swami led the way straight to a village marketplace about 15 kilometers from Jaffna to buy eggplants for lunch. The farmers in that region grow the finest eggplants in all the island and sell them in the open market. As soon as Yoga Swami appeared in his compound, Chellappa Swami would have a few cents tied in a corner of his sarong and be in a hurry to get there before the best eggplants were gone. It was a 2-hour walk, even at Chellappa Swami's pace. Once there, Yoga Swami would wait while his Satguru went by turns to every stall in the market, soberly weighing the merits of dozens of eggplants before going back to finally buy 1 or 2. Then they walked home to Nallur. He would march up to his hut carrying the eggplants in both hands and without a pause sit down to cook, lighting a fire on the ground to heat water in a clay crock supported by 3 rocks. Chellappa Swami was a masterful chef, even though he simply boiled everything together in one pot, rice, spices, and vegetables. As Chellappa Swami ate mostly what he cooked himself, Yoga Swami was invariably left sitting by, watching his guru prepare and serve him lunch. While the pot simmered, Chellappa Swami would crush and add spices, then sit before the fire weaving palm leaves into bowls. He didn't talk unless to rebuke Yoga Swami. If he felt his mind had wandered, this was their meal for the day, and it deserved his attention. But if Chellappa Swami sensed the least desire or attachment toward the food, should his own mouth even begin to water, he would stop where he was and break the pot on the ground. No lunch that day. They went on to the next thing. It was the Guru's way of disciplining his instinctive nature, keeping it reined in. He did this so often that the compound around his hut was littered with shards. Yoga Swami later described his Guru as one surrounded by broken clay pots. Chellappa Swami did this even before Yoga Swami's time, smashing a steaming pot of food he had just prepared with the self-chastisement. "So, you want rice to eat." Such was his renunciation. While the common man saw a common beggar in the sage, to Yoga Swami everything Chellappa Swami did revealed his infinite grace. For him there was only one goal in life, self-realization, and to allow anyone to think that less was sufficient was out of the question. In the lion, Yoga Swami captured his guru's unabating message. Self must be realized by self, all must be pervaded by self. We must give up desire for wealth and woman and shun the greed for ownership of land. We must guard Dharma like our eyes. We must give worship to the lotus feet. All thought in us must die, O my great Guru, thou mighty lion. Free from ignorance must we remain. We must behold God everywhere. We must have knowledge of the truth and ever cherish it. Falsehood and jealousy must be expelled. We must transform and into blessings change the things which cause delusion and make us confused. O peerless Guru, whom others hold in high esteem, O lion who in my bondage takes care of me. Perhaps it was precisely Chellappa Swami's stringent restriction on anything smacking of gratitude and adulation that gave wings to Yoga Swami's later poems, those odes to his guru that ring with the praise he felt but was forbidden to utter in Chellappa Swami's presence. In another song, The Cure for Birth, Swami extols Chellappa Swami as the great soul who released him from the cycle of birth and death. Lord of the Devas, with sweet-scented wreaths adorned, bounty's bosom, liberation's flame, the all-pervading consciousness who with form and without form stands, who is both here and there, who king and guru has become. At sight of him my heart was calm. My present birth he'll terminate. In all my births with me he stayed, to make me free of future births. On me his grace he has bestowed. He is himself his only peer. Throughout eternity he stands. For those who offer praise to him, no future birth or death will rise. The Nallar Kanda Swami temple is immensely immensely popular throughout the peninsula, yet even today people may come there from distant villages, perhaps only several times in their lives. Sometimes, without knowing why, such devotees would be called off the street by this eccentric rishi, then berated and abused for acts and thoughts they did not know were within them. Perhaps it went right over their heads, but he made them sit still while he acted out some dramatic conflict they had no notion had anything to do with them. They just listened politely and waited to leave. When he sent them away, they were perplexed by the experience, having at the time no idea of the purification they had undergone. Many did not even know the name of the man who put them through the ordeal, but later, sometimes after years, they would meet a situation in their life, an experience would come, and they would feel a release from what might have been. Some would remember and trace that release to the scolding they received from the sage at Nalur. Bringing flowers or fruit, they might come see him again to make their pranams. He would invariably chase them away, cursing them for daring to worship him. He was clever at avoiding or getting rid of people who wanted to drink the full measure of the Guru's grace, but were not ready to live with his intensity. He would scold them and chase them off to start. If that failed, he would hide from them. Whenever his sister let into her compound a person he didn't want to see, someone seeking to intercept him at his hut, he would stay away for days. Chellappa Swami always got his way in these matters, one way or another. No amount of devotion or pleading or persistence prevailed. Just before Yoga Swami came to him, a young fellow had drawn near whom Chellappa Swami seemed to have taken a liking to. Villagers assumed the Guru was training him as his disciple. He was allowed to stay around the Tiradi each day, but never at night. Even though the youth had no relatives in Jaffna and no place to go, Chellappa Swami chased him away every evening, no matter how much he begged to stay. This went on for a few months until one day Chellappa Swami told him to go live with a widowed merchant, a devotee who had opened a shop around the corner from the temple. He and his 2 children lived in a house behind the shop. There was plenty of room for the boy to sleep there. Chellappa Swami said. It seemed a fine arrangement, but a few weeks later the aspirant approached him standing in front of his hut one morning and complained that there were just too many problems about living with the merchant. Would he please relent and let him stay with him instead? Chellappa Swami inquired what the difficulties were. The boy explained that the man had a daughter who managed the household in her mother's absence, and now people were talking about his living in the same house with her. That was the gossip going around, and it could have been avoided, he said, if he hadn't been there in the first place. By this plea, he hoped Chellappa Swami would feel sorry and admit he had made a mistake. But without a moment's pause, the Guru declared there was nothing to do now but marry the girl, and walked off to make the arrangements himself. A week later, the newlyweds were settled in their own home in Kolumbathurai. Chellappa Swami saw that everything went well for them thereafter, and they remained among his most faithful devotees. In Chellappa Swami's world, one morning during the hot season, Yoga Swami was following his guru along a remote village path when Chellappa Swami decided they should go to Kirimalai for a bath. There, as part of a complex of several temples near the ocean, one of which is a large Shiva temple, are 2 walked-in sunken tanks fed by freshwater springs, which people bathe in for purification. These pools are highly thought of, and people walk long distances to take the sacred bath. Adults and children joyously fling themselves into the crystal waters. Adults swim lengthwise and breadthwise. Children splash about and have their first swimming lessons here. Off to Kirimalai they strode, though it was an all-day walk to cover the 21 kilometers each day, which meant a late supper. Yoga Swami couldn't help looking forward to a cool dip in the oceanside tank. Such luxuries came rarely in his guru's company. Holding umbrellas aloft, they walked for hours in the parching heat. Finally, below them, they spied the famed seaside tanks. Only a few pilgrims were there ahead of them. The sun at its zenith sparkled on the cool blue water, and a gentle breeze reached them from the ocean beyond. Yoga Swami sighed and smiled, savoring the salty air. Chellappa Swami looked to the left and right, right, then announced, "We have bathed," and turned to go. A bit startled that he would not feel the cool waters, Yogaswami followed. On the way back to Nallur, they observed that the chariot festival was in progress at the Mauthadi Vinayagar temple. Chalapaswami stopped, saying, "You need refreshments." He gave Yogaswami 2 cents to buy pitu. Yogaswami bought the sweet dish made of steamed rice flour and coconut and got some lime and jaggery water to go with it from the free refreshment tent. Chalapaswami, declining any food, stood by as his disciple enjoyed the snack. Just as Yogaswami finished the last morsels, Chalapaswami set out for home. Yogaswami walked briskly to keep up, as the food slushed in his gurgling stomach. Thinking, "I can't walk any more," he paused. Without turning around, Chalapaswami shouted, "Oh, come, come." It was not a comfortable walk. Back at the Taradi in Nallur, Chalapaswami gave him a few cents for tea. Only then did he take anything himself. In one of his songs, Yogaswami alluded to such lessons about the body. Taking the body as reality, I am roaming like a fool, when the Supreme and Perfect One cured my delusion and made me his, that source of bliss who graciously appeared, concealing the fair-tressed lady by his side. I saw at the city of Nallur, there Naga blossoms fall like rain. When through previous karma my mind was in confusion and I was sorely distressed, God of his great mercy had the holy will to take me under his protection and come to earth as the embodiment of grace. 'Twas him I saw near the house of the chariot in the city of Nallur where the goddess Lakshmi dwells. One day, first thing in the morning, Chalapaswami took Yogaswami begging. They would, he said, get something from a rich merchant who ran a store in the Grand Bazaar, the main shopping district in Jaffna. Arriving while it was still cool, they stood outside the shop waiting for an offering. This merchant was actually a poor prospect, and Yogaswami knew that Chalapaswami knew it, a miserly fellow who never gave or put up with worthless beggars, as he called sadhus who approached him for alms. The merchant arrived an hour or so after they did, and while he surely saw the Swamis standing there, went inside, greeted his clerks, and sat down at a table on the veranda, in plain sight, as if he hadn't noticed them. Business came and went as usual. He worked on his account books all morning, then closed the shop, and went home for his bath and lunch. The two sadhus sat through the hottest hours. Chalapaswami was in blissful soliloquy. Yogaswami was pensive. The merchant came back in the afternoon and returned to work. Hour after hour they stood by, waiting for alms. It was nearly time to close the shop for the day, and Yogaswami was growing impatient. Chalapaswami was quiet. Finally the merchant closed his ledger and stood up to go. As he did, the eyes of the beggars caught his. He motioned to his clerk and sent him out to give them 1 cent. 1 cent! Chalapaswami proudly held up the paltry coin as if it were a treasure, declaring, "Good wages for a day's work." Yogaswami wanted to speak his mind to the merchant, but Chalapaswami pulled him away down the street and into a tea shop. He made him take the penny and buy himself a cup of tea. At first Yogaswami refused, struggling still with the storekeeper's miserliness and not wanting to partake of any refreshment that his guru was not also enjoying. But Chalapaswami insisted. As Yogaswami drank the black tea, it suddenly struck him that Chalapaswami had begged all day only for his disciples' benefit, thereby revealing his infinite patience. That man gave a penny along with his spite, and the Guru took them both away. But Chalapaswami was ready to go, so he downed the last sip of tea and followed the Guru happily back to Nallur. What passed between them was theirs alone. Chalapaswami rarely spoke straight to his disciple. His method was indirect, yet Yogaswami understood him perfectly. He didn't ask questions about the spiritual path, about Shiva, about the Shaiva Siddhanta philosophy, about anything, but simply remained open to all that Chalapaswami offered. There was never a question of whether Chalapaswami would give. He gave and gave and gave to all who could possibly receive. All his life, Yogaswami exclaimed in wonder that in the very first look he received from Chalapaswami, all the effects due from his past actions, all his desires, and all his attachments to the world were erased. This and more he eloquently expressed in Hail to the Feet of the Satguru, enumerating the treasures that Chalapaswami bestowed upon him. Hail to the feet of the teacher who gave initiation and made me his, saying, You are not the body, you are the Atma. Hail to the feet of the able master, acclaimed as the great Tapashvin, who gave the sweet and noble saying, Be and see. Hail to the feet of the Satguru who came and guarded me like a mother so that I need not frequent the homes of the miserly and mean. Hail to the feet of the true Guru who came like a madman and took in his hands my wealth, my body and my life, all three. Hail to the holy dancing feet that have become what is within and without, body and life, you and I. Hail, ever hail to the anklet-circled feet of the revered and bounteous one, who bestowed on me the priceless blessing of living as I please. Hail to the feet of the Satguru, who placed his feet upon my head, that I might not be bewitched by the beauty of ladies bedecked with blossoming flowers. Hail to the feet of the Perfect One, who gave me the grace to prosper by looking at me, his slave, and saying, Why do you have doubt? Hail to the sacred feet of the great Giver, who dispelled my fears and made me his, and by one word caused me to be as a painted picture. Hail to the holy feet of the good Tapashvin, who revealed the whole world within the one word Om, and told me, It is I. Hail to the feet of the precious one, who at the proper time took me as his own, and showed to me the glorious dance at beautiful Nalur. Hail, all hail to the feet of the gracious master, who by his left saved me from wandering here and there in search of food and money. Yoga Swami witnessed many times the power of the Guru to expiate the effects of deeds and magnify the spiritual qualities of the disciple, yet he observed that previous few people ever suspected what Challapa Swami had done for them. The magic of the Guru occurred daily around Challapa Swami, but always without his taking on the outward persona of Guru. Only to Yoga Swami and Katiravela Swami, and perhaps a few others, did the sage of Nalur show anything of his deepest self. Often, when his two disciples were with him, he would dance around laughing and tease them. No, you haven't caught me yet. No, you've not caught me yet. On occasion, Challapa Swami would go into a shop in Jaffna town and demand certain things, a few contents, a coconut or some bananas, always persevering until he got what he wanted. Once when Challapa Swami was making such an ultimatum, a devotee was standing nearby. The shopkeeper was shouting back at the Guru, refusing to give and ordering him to get out. Challapa Swami continued with accelerating insistence. Embarrassed by the exchange, the devotee offered to purchase whatever the Guru wanted, anything in the shop, but the moment he spoke up, Challapa Swami turned on him, chased him out of the shop, returned to the owner and barked, I am doing a service for you, and for that I require payment. One festival day, Yoga Swami stood on the Nalur path, awash in eternal bliss, due to the contentment that everything was in his hands. The deity was being taken in procession round the temple amid an enormous crowd of 100,000 or more. Yoga Swami said, They are not taking umbrellas. Today the Swami, the deity, being taken in procession, is going to get drenched thoroughly. Almost before Yoga Swami completed the sentence, his guru roared from the distance, Many are the people who have said such things on this Nalur road. It was a not-so-subtle correction from his guru, and in a dismissive voice, Yoga Swami was humbled. When the clear blue sky turned cloudy and rain began to pour minutes later, Yoga Swami was openly embarrassed to see his petty prediction come true. Then and there Challapa Swami had uprooted the shoot of miracle-mongering that had begun to sprout in the disciple. I beheld the Shiva Guru. By the fall of 1906, Yoga Swami's inner search had reached full stride. For several years he had been with his guru. The young man who once walked forth and back from Kilinachchi to Nalur was now gone. In his place stood a veteran Swami, robust and barrel-chested, in threadbare white cotton veshti, his thick gray-flecked hair wound into a knot at the back, his forehead glowing with vibhuti, his stride powerful and purposeful. A thick black beard framed his high cheeks and soft brown eyes. Their steely calm gave a glimpse of the man, tempered by obedience and alert to vast depths of silence within. Those who looked into his eyes seemed to see the cosmos itself, so deep and serene. Yoga Swami was like a young lion. His eyes were as sharp as steel, His 34-year-old body was lean and fit. Having found the treasure of treasures, his guru, he was more eager than ever to pursue the demanding inner path ahead. Yogaswami undertook a rigorous routine of sadhana and tapas under the guidance of his Satguru. One tapas he performed was to rub chili paste on his body and meditate bare-chested in the midday sun, and the sun in Jaffna is intense, or prostrate and roll around the temple in the scorching hot sand, as devout penitents still do today. Vaidhyalingam reported that Yogaswami rolled his body in this way the full 3 kilometers from Kolumbathurai to Nallur 2 or 3 times. Between Kolumbathurai and Nallur there is a charming Ganesha temple, the Kailasha Pilayar Koil, where Guru and Shishya would meet and sit for hours. The odd couple also visited the Panrithalachi Aman temple, where they would cook pongal, a sweet rice dish, make their offerings to Aman, pray and meditate, then enjoy the pongal as their lunch before returning by foot to Nallur temple. This was their pattern until early 1910. Ultimately, they no longer moved as guru and disciple, but as one being. Challapaswami's harshness had waned. He was still stern, and few of his ample eccentricities ever left him, but as he neared his 7th decade, he softened and no longer pushed Yogaswami away. Swami shares glimpses into these momentous days in Darshan of the Master. In Nallur's noble town, where dwell great sages who no second thing perceive, I beheld the Shiva Guru, Chelapan by name, whose state is such that he cannot be enmeshed in the lustful net of women's sparkling eyes. All is well, my son, he lovingly declared. From time's beginning until now, all men have made inquiry as to whether it is 1 or 2 or 3. He who beyond the reach of all philosophy remains came as the glorious Guru of Nallur, and upon me high dignity bestowed. The taintless one, who air, fire, water, and the mighty earth became, whom none can comprehend, as the Satguru came there face to face, and having banished all my doubts, took me beneath his sway. Then indeed I gained the state whereof the gunas I was free. In the golden land of Lanka, where birds start at the sound of falling water, in Nallur's town, where the son of him who holds the fire is pleased to dwell as the divine Guru, to bestow true life upon me, he appeared and showed to me his feet and made of me his man. Change was in the air. Yogaswami sensed it and saw it in Challapaswami's sometimes searching glance, less stern than expectant, which said more clearly than words what was to come next. That is all I have for you. Challapaswami's second disciple, Katiravellu Swami, was around through these years. Yogaswami saw him infrequently. Brothers though they were, forged in one fire, they were rarely seen in the same place, and knew little more than each other's names. Still, in one another they saw themselves. When they met, they would know and nod. Challapaswami seemingly went to any length to keep them apart, out of sight and away from people. During the week of Skanda Shashti, Challapaswami called his 2 Shishyas together and led them to a quiet place to meditate. Under a shady ironwood tree, within shouting distance of Nallur temple, was a long slab of flat, chiseled granite, abandoned there years before. Challapaswami seated them and ordered them to go inside until he called them out. They sat on the bare stone and closed their eyes. Nallur's sage quietly walked away. Later in the day he brought them each a pot of water. It was several days before he came again, bringing tea, leaving it beside them without a word. He came and went in this way for several weeks, guarding and watching, careful not to disturb their vigil. He assigned a senior devotee to watch after the 2 Tapashvins as well. They grew thin from the fasting, haggard and sunburned, but neither moved from his seat except for nature's call. After a month they received only water. Challapaswami would come and stand by for hours at a time, looking from one to the other. Finally, on the 40th day, some say it was less than 40 days, the Guru approached, solemnly brewed tea on the open fire, and filled their metal cups. As they feebly raised them to drink, he abruptly swung out, knocking the cups from their hands. They watched, unperturbed, as the tea spilled onto the dry sand, startled but accepting of the Guru's gesture. He glared at them briefly, then began cooking a meal. The 2 watched with interest. It was a scene they had witnessed many times. He wove eating bowls from palm leaves while the pot of rice and curry boiled, an inimitable concoction some called chalapa stew. When the food was ready, he ladled out small portions and handed a steaming bowl to each. As they began to eat, he kicked the food from their hands. "That is all I have for you. Go and beg for your food." Though it shook them both to the core, they knew this was a rare spiritual initiation, a sign that their training was complete. "Two elephants cannot be tied to one post," he announced, releasing them from their austere vigil. Not many days passed before Katiravelu Swami disappeared. It is said he went to India. Yoga Swami also went missing. He had returned to Kolumbathurai to rest and recover from his arduous fast. After 1 week he walked to Nalur to be with Chalapa Swami. Blissful and eager to see his guru, Swami entered the compound. During the few minutes they sat together, Chalapa Swami blessed him with the following words: look here, the city of Lanka I have given, the king's crown I have given, as long as the world exists, as long as the seas exist." This final Diksha took place on the second Monday of the Tamil month of Panguni, March through April, in the year 1910. It was witnessed by Thyagarpanya, a devotee of Chalapa Swami and neighbor of Yoga Swami. Ever thereafter, Swami observed that day as his Diksha day, which he described as a coronation, like being crowned a king. Chapter 11, Yoganathan is dead. After his Diksha, Yoga Swami immediately set out on pilgrimage to the south. Perhaps he sensed that his guru was severing the cord that had connected them so closely. Perhaps he remembered Swami Vivekananda's pan-Indian trek following the death of his guru, Sri Ramakrishna. Or perhaps he simply took Chalapa Swami's words literally. For whatever reasons, he stood up and left the place, with only the clothes on his back. As a Parivrajaka wandering monk, he set out on a pilgrimage to Kataragama, Lord Murugan's shrine in the remote south of the island. He told no one he was leaving. Circling Ceylon on foot, he walked along back roads and country paths, proceeding east to the coast, then south to Mullaitivu and beyond, going where he pleased, stopping often at shrines and temples to meditate for hours or days. He walked along the coastal belt that skirts the eastern region, through Trincomalee, Sitandi, Batticaloa, Tirakovil, and Patuville. With no place to be next, nothing to do, he strolled the roads through towns and valleys like a monarch in his private garden. His practice was to see himself as everything and everything as himself. Life flowed gracefully through him and around him. Everything came of its own accord. He didn't need to plan or calculate. There was always a hut or a temple Devasthanam waiting for him at the end of the day. When he was hungry, someone was there offering him food or inviting him to their home for a meal. He had nothing to do but his inner work, and wherever he found himself he went in and in and in. Swami was a silent witness to the agrarian life that occupied most of Lanka's people in those days. Farming and fishing were the mainstays, along with celebrations, festivals, trials, and tribulations. He saw a beautiful world filled with Shiva, where everyone did their work and where everything is as it should be at every point in time, and all he saw he took as his own. The passage of life before him was instructive, contrasting as it did his own renunciation, and Chalapa Swami made no decree. This was a deeply inner pilgrimage, a time of reorientation after Chalapa Swami's unexpected severance of their almost daily companionship. Yoga Swami had to redefine his life in light of his guru's decree. All along the way he prepared the ground for the work he would do in his lifetime, developing intuitive powers and immersing himself again and again in the self, the absolute reality that was his formless home. All along the way he prepared the ground for the work he would do in his lifetime, developing intuitive powers and immersing himself again and again in the self, the absolute reality that was his formless home. The majority faith on the island was Buddhism, then as now, and he encountered Buddhist people frequently during his travels, something that had rarely happened in the Hindu-majority north where he had lived his entire life. In later years, when Buddhists came to see him, he often spoke to them like a bhikkhu, quoting verbatim from Buddhist sermons. On this pilgrimage, Yogaswami embraced the whole of Ceylon from the inside out. He fell in love with its tropical splendor, its geographical beauty, and its human diversity. He saw and heard everything people did on his estate, and ever after spoke of my island, my people, my saints and sages. In later years, if one of his devotees had some business to do with the government, Yogaswami would assure him, "No need for concern. My government, my prime minister, my finance minister," he sang. "Lanka is our land. There is no male or female, no sameness or diversity. Heaven and earth are one. This is the language of the great. Come now and be happy. We will rule the world." If a man came to Yogaswami for blessings, having been transferred to some far-off province, Swami would tell him about the temples and shrines in that area. He knew the land, the legends, and local people like he knew his own village. He would describe the shrines to visit, when to go, and what kinds of prayers to offer. "I meditated there for several days," he would say. "You must go there often." Only gradually, through the years, did the great range and depth of experiences that his pilgrimage brought him come to light. It was 2 months before he reached Kokilai. He was in no hurry. 2 weeks later, he was in Trincomalee. From there, he went inland to the hill country to Polonnaruwa and Sigiriya, then out again to Batikaloa. He met many holy men along the way, saints, sages, fakirs. He sat with yogis living deep in the jungle or in caves in the hills. He visited Buddhist monasteries and met Sufi saints and Christian clergy. Everywhere he felt at home, everywhere he was welcomed. On the road one day he met a Muslim holy man. They walked together through the afternoon, and before they parted the saint sang for him a song in praise of God, of such purity and beauty that Yogaswami never forgot it. He sang it often throughout his life. When he did, he would describe this saint to his devotees. Near a crossing of the Kauai River, he came upon 7 fakirs who lived in huts in the jungle, practicing austerities to gain yogic powers. They invited him to join in their psychic pursuits and perform several tricks to entice him, but he did not accept. A moment later, they materialized a huge wild boar. Squealing and frothing, it charged straight at him, blood dripping from its jaws. He didn't have a chance to save himself. He didn't flinch, neither did he steel himself. He watched, and just as the beast barely touched him, it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. He thanked them for the fun and continued across the river. Passing through a Muslim village in the Batikaula district, he encountered an Islamic mystic named Thakarar, who had divined Swami's inner thoughts and desired to honor the wandering holy man, invited him to a feast. Seeing the Hindu monk hesitate, he asked if he had any conflict with Islam. Remembering Chalapa Swami's aloofness to caste and creed, Yogaswami joined the feast. Later he reported that, contrary to Islamic practice, the women joined with the men in hosting him. Thakarar gave him a bangle, saying, "Wear this amulet and go. You will not incur any difficulties." Years later, Swami spoke of that incident. "So long as that bangle was on my wrist, the Muslims treated me very respectfully. One night I removed it and left it in the rest house where I stayed, thinking, why do I need this? Near Tirakovil, he met a lone fakir who lived in a cave. Taking shelter from the rain, they sat and talked for several hours. As Swami prepared to leave, the fakir presented him with a magical tin can, a symbol of what he had accomplished in the 11 years he had lived there. He told his guest, "Keep the can, and everything you want will miraculously come to you." Yogaswami graciously accepted the gift and went on his way. As soon as Swami was out of sight, he threw the can away. In mid-July, about 6 months into his journey, Yogaswami reached the southern coast and began the trek inland to Kataragama, 120 kilometers, on harsh and difficult trails through the dense jungle of the Manaragala and Bibile area, which is home to the Aboriginal tribe known as Veda. Yogaswami later narrated to Valapuram, a schoolteacher in Jaffna, his experience about some of the trials he faced, which S. Ampikaipakan captured in his biography. "I was walking towards Kataragama, and as I was approaching Matakalapu, suddenly I got fever. I could not bear the pain, so I rested underneath a tree and lay down on the ground with a stone as a pillow. In the morning the fever was gone, and there was a 25-cent coin on the stone pillow. I took that to a store, ate dosa, and continued to walk. Anaikuti Swami, perhaps Sitanaikuti Swami, saw me on the way. He came running and embraced me, saying, "Because I saw you, it will rain now." I responded, "Let the rain come after 1 hour." It rained indeed after 1 hour. Later on the way I had to cross a river, but it had flooded. Unable to cross, I made a shallow furrow in the riverbank sand and slept for 3 days. On the third day some natives came to this side of the river on a catamaran. They cooked food for me and called, "O fasting noblemen," to wake me up. They fed me a meal and took me to the other side of the river with them in their boat. Soon the trail was crowded with thousands of devotees on their way to Murugan's shrine for Isala Parahera, the annual 14-day festival that ends on the full moon night of July-August. Each devotee carried a bundle of supplies, food, camphor, and simple bedding. Yogaswami carried only a coconut, the traditional offering every pilgrim brings. He slept in the open and ate nothing for the 3 days it took to reach the remote shrine. There he spent most hours of the night on the sacred hilltop in meditation and communion with Lord Murugan, and the daytime hours around the jungle shrine and ashrams. Meanwhile, Yoganathan's relatives in Jaffna, frantic over his long absence, were making every attempt to find him. He was a sannyasin, so they were used to not seeing him for weeks at a time, but he had never left them for so long. Family ties are strong in Jaffna, and people keep track of one another no matter what they decide to do with their lives. Finally, after postponing it as long as he could, Chinaya arranged with one of Chellappa Swami's oldest devotees to accompany him to Nallur. He thought perhaps the mad one might know the nephew's whereabouts. They found Chellappa Swami sitting alone on the Tiradi steps weaving fans, talking. Watching them come up the street, he put his work aside. They apologized for disturbing him, praised his fans, remarked on the weather, hemmed and hawed, and then nervously asked their question, "Where is Yoganathan? We have not seen him for months." Chellappa Swami shrugged and went back to weaving. "Oh, Yoganathan, he's dead." Realizing there was nothing more to that conversation, the family left in dismay. Badly shaken by the news, they tried to disbelieve it for a long time. Aunt Muthapillai took it especially hard. They waited several months, hoping Swami would appear, but they finally gave up. Their nephew was gone. They performed what funeral rites they could without the body and disposed of his personal effects. Meanwhile, Yogaswami was wandering about the Isle of Lanka, seeing everything for the first time. He said all his life that it was the finest of pilgrimages. Kataragama was all he had heard it to be. The spirit and power of the place at festival times is intoxicating. The shrine lies in a wilderness of nearly impenetrable jungle, but this only adds to its attraction. A sublime, solemn atmosphere hangs over this valley ringed by 7 sacred hills. The name Kataragama is uttered with respect by Hindus, Buddhists, and Muslims alike. Empty and quiet much of the year, Kataragama erupts overnight at festival times into the most intense activity, then ending as quickly as it started. Filled with thoughts of the mercy and power of the deity, people regularly perform special penances, receive blessings, make promises, take vows, and attain to spiritual heights that don't seem possible elsewhere. Swami spent an unknown time at the jungle temple. A few days, some claim, while others believe it was months. Here at the Murugan temple, he performed meditation and practiced being still, Suma Iru. Later, he sang this brief song of praise. "O Murugan of Kataragama, playing with your upraised spear, rid me of that foe, my karma. To you with faith I now draw near. O Lord, with foot in dance uplifted, who has an eye upon his brow, you as our God to us has gifted, at your feet with anklets ringed I bow. Everywhere your holy faces, your eyes, ears, hands, and feet I see, O Lord, who Kataragama graces, wherever you are, there I will be." From Kataragama, Yogaswami headed west toward Colombo, following the coast, navigating through Magama, Hambantota, Matara, and Dondrahead, Gale, and Kalutara. He kept a leisurely schedule, walking through hundreds of villages, talking to people, watching life go on around him. He stopped less often here, for the south is a predominantly Sinhalese area, and there are only a few Hindu temples. He stayed every night in a different village, invariably as a guest in a Tamil home. During his 6-week return journey, he underwent severe hardship, surviving only on alms, walking through jungles and facing wild animals. Due to flooded, muddy rivers, Swami often did not have proper drinking water and fell sick with malaria. With great effort, he rose each day to march another 20 or 30 kilometers, forcing his body to perform its duty, ignoring its complaints. Finally, with Lord Murugan's blessings, he arrived in the Colombo district, the bustling port capital of Ceylon. There on the road, he received the blessings of one of Lanka's most renowned siddhas, known as Anaikuti Swami, baby elephant, by virtue of his generous girth. Reaching out his arm, the siddha handed the weary wayfarer 5 cents, saying, "This is the trunk of Ganesha, giving confidence to you." He stayed for a few days at Kochikade, where he begged for his meals and slept on the roadside, along with the coal-handling railway workers. As a beggar, he approached the well-known Sir Panampalam Arunachalam, who gave him 10 cents. He spent 1 month in and around Colombo, the island's largest city, then several weeks inland between Koti and Ratnapura. From there, he took the rising roads to the mountainous town of Kandy and south to Nuwara Eliya, the hill country center of tea plantations. He walked along village paths and roads to Kurunagala and all the way to Puttalam near the coast again. He stayed in Anuradhapura for several weeks, bringing all the threads of the pilgrimage together, then continued on toward Mitale. The night before Swami arrived in Mitale, Tiru Saravanamuthu, overseer of the town's public works department, had a holy dream in which Lord Murugan appeared and instructed him. "Receive the saint who is returning by foot from Kataragama, famished and wearing tattered clothes. Give him all that he needs. Treat him well. We are one and the same. His return to Jaffna is a great gift to the people." The next day, Saravanamuthu met the mendicant who fit the description in his dream, and after inquiring as to who he was, invited Swami to his house with immense joy. He spoke excitedly about his vision as he practically dragged Swami inside. Yoga Swami smiled, listened, and let himself be hosted. Saravanamuthu gave him a new veshti and shawl and invited him to bathe. After a luxurious meal, Swami was shown the guest room, where he spent a restful, rejuvenating 2 days. In the background, peeking out at Swami whenever he had a chance, was Saravanamuthu's nephew, a young boy who was so captivated by Swami's darshan on that fateful day that he served him with utmost devotion his entire life. It was A. Thilayampalam who, 4 decades later, Swami assigned as the architect of his Shivathondan Nalayams in Jaffna and Chankaladi. Early in the morning of the 3rd day, Swami decided to proceed the rest of the way to Jaffna by train, declining the presents and a thick bundle of rupees his host urged on him. Yoga Swami accepted just enough money for a train ticket. Yoga Swami later remarked, "Lord Murugan was looking after me well through Saravanamuthu." As a parting gesture of gratitude, Swami sang the following verse: "Apanum amayum niye arye shahothararum niye opil manaviyum niye Otharum mantharum niye, sepul arasarum niye, thevathai thevarum niye, upaviyalam niye, enai andathum niye. Father and mother are you, dear brothers and sisters are you, incomparable wife is you, precious sons are you, royal potences are you, the devas and all gods are you, the great earth is you, and that which guards and governs me is also you." Under the alupai tree, The train ride to Jaffna took 2 days, back through Anuradhapura, then north the next morning, 190 kilometers to Jaffna station. Yogaswami arrived as he had left nearly a year before, with nothing but the clothes on his back. He walked straight to Nallur temple and threw himself at the feet of Challapa Swami. Having completed his travels, Yogaswami was fulfilled, exuberant, his heart overflowing with love for his guru. Now Challapa Swami gave his successor a new sadhana. You go and hold the Ilupai route. Ni poi Ilupai virai pidi. Yogaswami was not eager to leave his guru, and he lingered awkwardly. Seeing Challapa Swami's clay meal pot, which lay nearby, he thought, what a great blessing it would be to have it as a secret artifact. Suddenly Challapa Swami roared like thunder and scoffed, "So this is your bondage." He threw the pot on the ground, shattering it into pieces, a gesture taken as Challapa Swami's final sundering of the guru-disciple dualism that it represented to his shishya. Following his guru's edict, Yogaswami returned to Kolumbathurai, taking his seat 3 meters from a road crossing at the base of a mature ilupai tree, Maduka longifolia, a hardwood species prized for its fuel oil and medicinal attributes. Its shade and protection from the elements would be important for him in the years to come. In pounding rain or scorching sun, he sat immobile, immersed in its inner being, oblivious to the outside world. A Palayar temple stands just across the road. From that point onward, from 1911 to 1915, Challapa Swami did not allow Yogaswami to be with him. On one occasion, Yogaswami visited Challapa Swami's hut. Suddenly the sage emerged, shouting and swearing at him to get out of there. Realizing that his guru was about to start throwing things, Yogaswami turned on his heels and retreated the way he came. "Stand on your own 2 feet, the sage bellowed after him. Challapa Swami would come to the ilupai tree occasionally, observe his disciple, and go. Once, when his guru came, Yogaswami stood up and went to worship him. Challapa Swami glared, scolding, "What, are you seeing duality? Try to see unity." Chastened by these words, Swami remained rooted to the spot. News travels faster than the wind in Jaffna. Before Swami had left Nallur temple, his uncle Chinaya and aunt Muthapillai had heard from a dozen people about his reappearance. They were astonished, perplexed, and happy all at once. They hurried to the ilupai tree to see for themselves. There he was in rapt meditation. They hardly recognized him at first. He had changed so much. They called out to him, "Yoganathan." He did not answer or even open his eyes, but it was him all right, and he was very much alive. They talked the matter over with friends and neighbors late into the night and decided that Chinaya Muthapila and her son, Vaithyalingam, would return to the tree at dawn to speak with Yoganathan. When they arrived, he was still deep in samadhi. They left a tray of fruit for him and sent off for Nallur by bullock cart to confront Challapa Swami again. Chinaya ranted all the way about how strange and cruel it was for Challapa Swami to tell them their nephew was dead. He was bold in approaching the sage this time. He complained that they had conducted Yoganathan's funeral and finished the period of mourning, only to find he actually wasn't dead at all. They resented the lie. "How could you say that?" Challapa Swami rode out the storm. Holding his ground, he retorted stoically, "What I told you was not a lie. Yoganathan is dead." That enigmatic response, delivered with such calm finally, left them speechless. Knowing that further discussion would be useless, they shook their hands in dismay and left. Pondering the sage's words for a long time, they slowly began to understand that he was referring to a spiritual transition rather than a physical one. With Challapa Swami's insight unfolding inside them, they perceived for themselves in the weeks and months ahead that indeed their nephew was a different person. And with his puzzling ruse, Challapa Swami had magically severed all remaining attachment they had for Yoganathan. He had renounced family life, and they had been forced to renounce him. Adopting a humble hut. For some years, Yogaswami made the Ilupai tree his preferred place of sadhana, his roofless roadside hermitage. Those who were alive in those days told of how he sometimes looked out from fierce eyes that struck people with terror. If anyone dared approach, and few did, they were so afraid he would grab a stick and chase them away. When not immersed in his spiritual disciplines, he would wander the area around Jaffna and visit his favorite sites. S. Ampikapakan, shares. For a long time, Swamigal never went far from Jaffna after he came back from his walking pilgrimage to Takaragama. Swamigal used to say, "I don't have permission to go out of Jaffna Bay." As far as we know, only after 1928, Swamigal used to go to Kandy and Colombo. He took those journeys for the benefit of devotees living there. The advocate M.S. Elethambi used to accompany him. Swamigal considered that he was the right person. Just a year before Chelapa Swami's Mahasamadhi, Yogaswami moved into a hut in the garden of a home near the Ilupai tree. This hut, which would be his humble ashram for the next 50 years, was tied to his history of Naniyar, the man who welcomed Kadait Swami on the island of Mandaitivu when Swami first arrived in Ceylon. Naniyar had let Kadait Swami stay in this very hut, became a staunch devotee, and maintained a shrine for the Guru. In Chelapa Swami's day, Naniyar, a large, muscular, slow-witted fellow, used the hut as a tea shop not far from his temporary home in Ariyalai. He was devoted to Chelapa Swami as well, but the sadhu ignored him, as he ignored everyone. Whenever the shopkeeper came for blessings, Naniyar remained determined to get what he wanted. One day, when Chelapa Swami was walking by his shop, Naniyar, drunk at the time, rushed out, grabbed the Guru, and dragged him, kicking and screaming, to the compound behind his shop, tied him to a post, and threatened him with a knife, saying he would not free him until blessings were received. To Chelapa Swami's horror, Naniyar bathed him, managed to shave his head, and with frenzied zeal conducted his Guru Puja, passing a flame of camphor before his captive to implore the master's grace. All the while, Chelapa Swami, not one to endure such things, protested vehemently in the strongest language, screaming, scolding, and yelling for help. Finally, from inside her house on the same property, Mrs. Tangama, the wife of Naniyar's landlord, heard the ruckus and ran outside. The scene was as bizarre as it was farcical. Others gathered to see what was happening, and together the group, which by that time included Yogaswami, untied the captive Guru. Chelapa Swami fled, bellowing as he retreated indignantly. Naniyar, it seems, was satisfied and didn't bother Chelapa Swami again. In a way, Chelapa Swami had met his match in Naniyar. The Guru, who had assiduously avoided being worshipped his whole life, lost on that day, and as far as history knows, only on that day. In 1914, Tangama and her family noticed Yogaswami spending day after day under the Ilupai tree not far from the now vacant tea shop, which was just a simple hut with mud walls, cow-dung floor, and kajan roof. Swami was there nearly every day, despite the hottest sun and driving rains. It occurred to them to invite him to move into the hut. They waited for a good time to approach the formidable sadhu. For days they read the subtle signs and studied his expression to ascertain if maybe it was the opportune moment to present their idea. Finally they did. Tangama, her husband, Thirugnan Sampanthar, Tangama's uncle, Valipuram, and his wife, Nagavali, together approached Yogaswami. Tangama spoke. "How much longer are you going to sit at this junction, Swamigal?" Gesturing toward the hut, she bravely offered, "This hut lies vacant. You can stay there as long as you like in peace." Beseeching him with a pure and innocent heart, she recounted to Yogaswami the day Naniyar had captured and worshipped Chelapa Swami on that same spot, and submitted how great a blessing it would be to the family if he would stay there now. He could make it his ashram. Everything he wanted and needed would be provided. They would see to his needs and stay out of his way when he wanted solitude. They referred to Naniyar gingerly because, in a sense, they were trying to do the same thing he had done with Chelapa Swami. Yogaswami refused the offer for a time, but finally relented, conceding he could use the hut when he was in Kolambuthurai. From that day onwards, Tangama, her son Tivunavukarasu, Mrs. Tirunavukarasu, and their children performed selfless service to Yogaswami and all who visited his ashram. This humble hermitage became his abode until the day he attained Mahasamadhi. Many times during his life, Swami declared, "I'm going away and not coming back to this place." 3 or 4 days after he would be back, he once said, "Chilapa Swami would not let me leave this place. He sent me back. He left. Nani's devotion to the Guru has captured us here. He often spoke of it as Chilapa Swami's hut. A miracle will happen here tonight." In 1915, at age 75, Chilapa Swami fell ill. When he developed a cold and consequent inflammation of the joints, his relatives treated him with herbal baths. He was sick for about 2 weeks. During that time, Yoga Swami did not go to see him. That upset the devotees who were looking after Chilapa Swami. For several years, Swami had, from their point of view, been pushed to the outside of any circle gathered around Chilapa Swami. Of course, his disappearance was by decree of his guru, but not all acknowledged that. Knowing that Chilapa Swami was nearing the end of his life, they pestered Yoga Swami to go see him, perhaps expecting some dramatic exchange that would indicate without a doubt that it was Yoga Swami whom Chilapa Swami had initiated as the guru to follow him. One day, out of deepening concern, Yoga Swami did go to Chilapa Swami's hut. As Swami neared the compound, Chilapa Swami roared, "Yurada Padalayil, who is at the gate?" Words not unlike the Satguru's first statement to him, "Who are you?" Then he shouted, "Parada Veliyil Ninru, stand outside and be a witness." Obediently, Swami left the compound and walked back to his hut, intently aware that nations around the globe were locked in the bloody battles of World War I. Yoga Swami reflected to others, "Many are the kings who are dying now, among them his spiritual king lying at death's door." 2 days later, in the month of Panguni, March through April, on Ashvini Nakshatra, the illumined sage and spiritual giant Chilapa Swami attained Mahasamadhi. That morning he had told a neighbor who looked after his needs, "Tonight a great miracle will take place in this hut. Will you come?" But the neighbor did not go that night. The next morning he found Chilapa Swami on the road at the door to his hut. He had left his body in an unusual pose, one finger in his mouth and his legs frozen in a posture resembling Lord Nataraja's blissful dance, called Ananda Tandava. His grand departure that day was as strangely wonderful as his life had been. Earlier he had ordered that his body be cremated, knowing that some would insist on interring him in a samadhi chamber, as is often done for enlightened saints and sages. His devotees carried out his instructions, scattering their guru's ashes in the sea of Kirimalai. Without Chilapa Swami, his followers felt helpless and lost. Many became despondent, discouraged. Everyone noticed that Yoga Swami was not present for the last rites. 2 of the men who helped with the cremation went drinking afterwards. The alcohol inflamed their anger toward Swami and made them bold enough to confront him. They gathered up their courage as they entered his compound. Then one called out, "Our guru has left his body, and you did not even see fit to join us in our final respects to him." Yoga Swami suddenly appeared in the doorway of his hut, picked up a stick and chased them out his gate and down the road. Running a full tilt, they took a turn into the village headman's yard and dove headlong into a stack of hay to hide. Yoga Swami had since gone back to his evening, but their adventure was just beginning. As they waited a moment until the coast was clear, suddenly the hay caught fire. They were both smoking cigars. They jumped up and scrambled to put out the fire. Neighbors came with buckets of water and extinguished the flames. The headman turned the 2 culprits over to the constable, and they spent the night in jail. Such was Swami's inscrutable way. These men, like others who thought as they did, had no idea of what was going on in Swami's mind. He fully lived the spiritual life that Pandits only talk about. He knew the secrets of life and death, knew that Chilapa Swami was still very much aware in his inner world, that subtle world of light. Death was no end to things. He had simply discarded his old used-up body. That evening, Swami sat in deep communion with his beloved guru, just as certainly as when they shared the bilva tree's shade at Nallur. Why attend the funeral? He had received no inner orders to go, and in fact Chilapa Swami had asked him to stand apart. He was not one to do anything simply because social propriety dictated it. T. Shiva Yogapathi relates, "In the same spirit, Yoga Swami never encouraged anyone to build a memorial ashram to his guru. Instead, he told his devotees to go to Shiva Thandan Nilayam meditation hall and meditate with devotion to enjoy the darshan of all gurus of the lineage. Yoga Swami propounded, remain in one place with devotion. Onrai Patri or Athch Iru. Hence, no shrine was built for Swami during Yogaswami's lifetime. Later, devotees in the Nallar area built a simple shrine honoring the sage within the hut where he had lived and attained Mahasamadhi. In 1982, Satguru Shivaya Subramaniya Swami had the hut rebuilt as a small temple-like structure with concrete walls and metal roof. After that, hundreds of people gathered there on special days in the shadow of Nallar Temple to sing the glories of the Kailasa Parampara. God realization. In the last half of 1915, in the wake of Chilapa Swami's great departure, Yogaswami threw himself into a pattern of intensive sadhana. With his back to the giant Ilupai trunk, he would fast and sit in samadhi for days at a time. He slept without appearing to sleep, and on occasion it was noted that he spent nights meditating in the Kalumbuthurai cemetery, a common habit of the Siddhas and Nathas. Of this spirit of renunciation he later wrote, "Let go the rope, just go about here and there, see everything, be a witness, die before you die." Dr. T. Nalanathan, a strong Shaivite and a close devotee, recalls Swami's comments to him about that period. "It was in 1922 that Swami told me for the first time how he attained God consciousness. His sadhana was indeed very strenuous. In a week, the first 3 days and nights would be spent in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. The fourth day was the only free day in the week when he would have some food and talk to friends. The next 3 days and nights again he would be immersed in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. The culmination of this strict and strenuous sadhana was Sayuja Samadhi, perpetual God consciousness, even in the waking state. At the end of 6 months the heavenly joy temporarily disappeared, and the mundane consciousness was indeed a step lower down. He gave up his regular sadhana, and since then let his God consciousness trickle down to his physical brain in a natural way. Yogaswami had joined the most elite of all groups, a handful of souls in each historical epoch who have realized Parashiva, the Absolute, the Self of all. Those who have had and continue to have the experience of self-realization cannot explain it. Anything they say about the self-God does not satisfy them as true, since the self is beyond the mind, beyond even the most pure and refined state of consciousness. It is impossible to use the language of the mind to convey it. Most realized ones talk little about that experience, which is not an experience at all. One can feel them as different, the space around them is charged. Somehow they are not in the world in the same way that the other people are. That darshan emanating from them is regarded by a Shaivite as the truest guide on the path. The devotee opens himself more and more to the darshan of a great soul, and no matter where he is on the path, it carries him within. Yogaswami's disciple, Shivaya Subramaniya Swami, who was not yet born, would later attempt a description of that ineffable reality. The self is timeless, causeless, and formless. Therefore, being that, it has no relation whatsoever to time, space, and form. Form is in a constant state of creation, preservation, and destruction within space, thus creating consciousness called time, and has no relationship to timelessness, causelessness, or formlessness. The individual soul, when mature, can make the leap from the conscious of space-time causation into the timeless, causeless, formless self. This is the ultimate maturing of the soul on this planet. The innermost center of consciousness, located only after the actinic forces dissolve concepts of form and even consciousness being conscious of itself, is found to be within the center of an energy-spinning force field. This center, intense in its existence, with consciousness only on the perimeter of the inside hub of this energy field, vitalizes all externalized form. Losing consciousness into the center of this energy field catalyzes one beyond form, time, space. The spinning hub of actinic energy, recreating, preserving, and dissipating form, quickly establishes consciousness again. However, this is then a new consciousness, the continuity of consciousness having been broken in the Nirvikalpa Samadhi experience. Essentially, the first total conscious break in the evolution of man is the first Nirvikalpa Samadhi experience. Hence, a new evolution begins anew after each such experience. The evolutional patterns overlap and settle down like rings of light. one layer upon another, causing intrinsic changes in the entire nature and experiential pattern of the experiencer. Stories were told that after Yogaswami first realized the self, he jumped up and ran 40 kilometers in jubilant celebration of the tremendous energy of that breakthrough. Slowly, Parashiva became home base to him, as he returned to that ultimate reality day after day, letting that realization penetrate and infuse every atom of his body, every facet of his mind. No longer was he an outer person going into the self, he was an inner person coming out of the self and then going back in again. He was that self, the all in all, and so was everyone else, even if they were unaware of it. He came out of these spiritual reveries, walked, radiated the light that was so intense within him, and occasionally sat to write Tamil verses, giving expression to his world of revelation and realization. In the years ahead, he composed those profound verses in shrines and homes, and in the Kolumbuthuri Vinayar temple across the road from his Ilupai tree, he sang of his experiences in this Nachintanai. I climbed upon the platform of Omkara. There I saw nothing. Kuthambai, there I saw nothing, my dear. I was blessed with the bliss of sleep without sleeping. I remained Suma. Kuthambai, I remained Suma, my dear. Ego disappeared. Happiness disappeared. I became he. Kuthambai, I became he, my dear. I have attained the flawless Nishdai that ever stays unchanging. There is no I, no you, Kuthambai. There is no I, no you, my dear. I became like a painted image, Kuthumbai. I became like a painted image, my dear, unable to say whether it is one or two. I attained the feet of the Lord, Kuthambai. I attained the feet of the Lord, my dear, which cannot be described in terms of good and bad. The Creator, who is the eye within the eye, I saw and rejoiced, Kuthambai. I saw him and rejoiced, my dear. Whether macrocosm and microcosm are one or two, I was unaware. Kuthambai, I was unaware, my dear. The 6 chakras and the 5 states of consciousness entirely disappeared. Kuthambai, they entirely disappeared, my dear. By seeing without seeing, the lotus feet I worshipped without worshipping. Kuthambai, I worshipped without worshipping, my dear.